Hey everybody. Been a long time, I know. The reason why it's been so long is because Cecil, my beloved Cecil, needed a new engine. I had been stringing that existing engine along for quite a while and not well. Trying to tune it myself, trying to keep it running. It was a bear to start, and it was just having all sorts of issues. And it turned out that one of its cylinders was coming loose, and it just needed a whole new long block. So we ended up doing that project locally with my local really fabrication shop, who happened to know a guy who had is actually retired, who had been a VW engine, air cooled engine builder for years in Albuquerque. And they got it done for me. It just took a heck of a long time. And now we're dialing it in and stuff like that. I was happy to have a local guy do it, which was great, but it just took up the whole summer for the most part. So but now I'm back in Cecil. I'm doing the shakedown run up in the Jemez Mountains. Absolutely beautiful. You can't really see behind me, but this is just amazing. I've got a bunch of other shots of the views and everything. So trying to get a little more light on myself. So it's I've been dying to get back out here because I do have Bumble, as you all know, and Bumble is a great off-road vehicle, excellent exploration vehicle, awesome. But the only problem with Bumble is exploring in the summer in New Mexico. It's really hot. It's just physically hot in Bumble. I don't have air conditioning. I wouldn't use it anyway. Too much stress on the vehicle, and I like to have the open air. But it's just absolutely amazing, these Safari windows. I know in previous videos I have extolled the virtues of the Safari windows, but they are absolutely amazing. It just is. It makes all the difference in the world. It's an absolute game changer. It's 91 degrees out here today, but it's such a dry climate. Although we have had a lot of rain lately, so we do have some humidity. We've got more rain this year than they've had in 10 years. So it looks like Vermont here. It really does. It's green and lush and beautiful. But it's these Safari windows. I just miss them so dearly. In fact, it's to the point where I'm talking with all my fabricator friends to come up with a solution for Bumble to be able to remove the windshield or something, or maybe do a cage on top with a removable windshield, or a windshield I could fold up or down, just because it makes all the difference in the world as far as the comfort and enjoyability, the viewing, everything. I'm so glad I bit the bullet and did that from the very beginning. Robert Skinner did it for me when he picked up the bus when I first bought it. So I have been struggling. I mean, just to cut to the chase, I need to start being able to, for the first time in my life, I need to start being able to do the work on these vehicles. I've got to stop relying. And I always say I'm going to do that. I've been saying I was going to do that with Land Rovers for 20 years. And believe me, there's a lot of things I do. I do all the maintenance. I do a lot of accessories, but just heavy duty things like engine replacement and stuff like that. I don't feel like I have the skills. I'm not confident enough to do that. But I need to be. I need to get to the point with the bus that I've got to get to the point where I can pull this engine out and fix anything that's wrong and put it back in, like everybody else who does like Shasta Snow Trip. All those guys can do all their own work. And the whole point of the whole split window scene now is that you do your own stuff. You know, it doesn't have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you got to be able to do it. And I'm determined to do more of that. And I'll try to cover that on this channel. Just doing more of my own stuff, because I can't be without the vehicle for that long, and quite frankly, it costs a fortune, and I'm tired of paying so much money for having that work done when I could do it myself. I know I can do it myself. It's just going to take more time. But then again, it was 2 months on this. I could have easily done it in that amount of time. May not have been as good, but I know I could do it. So enough of that. Look for more stuff like that in the future. I got some cars driving by here, and Violet's rolling around outside. So back in the vehicle and just doing a lot of exploration. I'm trying to capture with the bus a lot of the technical stuff, because it is remarkable. It is absolutely remarkable what this bus will go through. The off camber, the what would normally be a cross axle situation, with just 2-wheel drive, and the tires there down to about 22 psi. It is incredible. The rear swing axle, it's amazing how much flex it does have, and the torsion beam suspension, and it just keeps you going through it. And it's just a blast to drive, because in Bumble, all this would be exceedingly boring. I mean, it would be beautiful scenery, don't get me wrong, but it would be boring. The terrain is so easy for it that it would be boring. In this one, it is like your adrenaline's racing just going on a little washout section on the main forest road. The other thing is that you're just driving main forest roads. I know I've touched base on this before, but a lot of people are like, what's the big deal about this? And the big deal about this is that you can achieve a relative level of challenge without having to go off-road, without having to take the vehicle on something that is super duper challenging with tons of consequence. Here is very little consequence, which does take away from some of its thrill. But then again, it's really fun to drive because it requires a lot of skill. It requires a lot of throttle and carburation, tuning and throttle, finesse and just trying to keep those two rear tires on the ground. But I'm learning how to do it, but it's just so much fun because you're kind of hovering over the front of the vehicle at the same time while you're focused on the back and trying to keep the two traction tires having traction. Just a blast. And today my goal is I'm just doing a loop through Ponderosa, and I'm going to try to come out at the new brewery, or the newly opened brewery. It had been open before COVID, but it's open again in the something Mountain Brewery. I'll get the name of it when I'm there. And they have pizza and everything, so hopefully they're open in Jemez Springs. So I'll stop there because a big part of what I want to do with New Mexico Overland is focus on these things that I used to delight in Vermont, going to these small villages and finding like a great bistro or coffee shop or whatever in these far away, more remote locations. In New Mexico, they're fewer and farther between, and they're far more remote. But they're there, and they're really freaking cool. And the goal with Cecil is to just be out and doing that stuff. And if I have to stay overnight, like I probably will tonight, I'll stay overnight. I'll just pull off in the national forest, which is the beauty of it out here, and just camp. Just so great. I mean, the public access in the West is just unsurpassed. It doesn't quite have the thrill of the Vermont Class 4 roads when you're like finding these great roads that are like in the middle of a residential area with houses all, with old houses all over the place. It has its own incredible beauty and thrill. Believe me, I spent 20 years driving those roads. The problem with those roads is that they're so sensitive now as far as motorized travel that people just freak out. People come out screaming and yelling, and I don't want that anymore. I don't want to go through that kind of stress at all in my life anymore. And it's just so great to have public land. The land is public. It is there for you to enjoy. The roads are fine as long as there's a road. And the beautiful thing about the West is that if something is private, you can't go. You literally cannot go. You are stopped from going physically. It's gated, it's signed, there is no ambiguity whatsoever. Unlike Vermont, where you're driving down a Class 4 road, you're seeing it on the map, everything looks great, and next thing you know, landowners come out screaming and say this is a private road. And they of course know it's public, but they're trying to intimidate you. And believe me, you don't want to go through that. It's incredibly stressful, and I don't miss that at all about Vermont. It takes away from everything about it. But out here, it's just wonderful to be out. And I mean, the only thing I would love to have somebody to do this with more often. And I'll go into that in some other video about how I'm probably the most social person that I know in Vermont. And in New Mexico, I do have some riding friends that I mountain bike with and fat bike with that are dear to me out here, but I really have not found anybody else to do this kind of off-roading thing in Albuquerque. I do have friends who come out. We go to Colorado and the Rovers. The Rover Club scene has been my savior as far as a social life with various, there are events pretty much all through the year, and I'll be going back to the Mid-Atlantic Rally in Virginia, the scene of the crime where I broke my neck in a bizarre trip and fall accident moving a tree out of a trail last year. So I need to redeem myself, and I'll definitely be going back and seeing all of my East Coast friends there. In about a month, so stoked about that. But it's I've not really found anybody. I would love. There's this guy on YouTube, Overland Vintage Adventures or something, and Suzuki Samurai just driving by, and I've reached out to him and sent him a message. He's all the way in California, which I know it seems like it's close by, but it's almost closer to get to Virginia than it is to California. It's ridiculously far away. Hours and hours of driving, but I've reached out to him and say, hey, if you want to get together at some point, I'll either come to California or you can come to New Mexico, because he's kind of got the same theme going. Fun-loving guy. He's just out doing it himself, driving the forest roads. and it's just it'd be really cool to have somebody else to do this with in a bus. It'd be great. There are some bus events coming up. You know, I've got there's one in Jerome, Arizona, which is an awesome town, cliffside mining town, and then there's of course Shasta, which is coming up in the winter, which I'm living for because I'm dying to complete it this year, hell or high water. So that's what we're doing. But I'll just keep taking some video on this stuff and get you guys reacquainted. And just a beautiful afternoon. I'll stop at the pizza place and take some video there, and then we'll see what happens tonight. And I'm sure I'll do some more coverage tomorrow. So awesome! So glad to be back in Cecil. It's such an awesome rig. Jemez Springs Village in the Jemez Mountain Brew House. Violet wants to come in, but you can't. And unfortunately, you can't sit outside. There's some strange New Mexican rules about that. But I'm gonna go ahead and have a nice IPA and figure out what I'm gonna Back out in the Jemez Mountains, exploring west of Jemez Springs up on the ridge, and it's just an incredible endless spider web of forest roads up here. It's amazing how much moisture. It reminds me of Vermont. There are mud puddles everywhere, and I have not seen this at all in the last couple of years. But they've had so much rain. Everything is so nice and green. It is just gorgeous. It's almost meditative. You know, I've said this before about just slow driving, exploring off-road, but really we're always on-road. In the backcountry exploring like this has got to be one of the most meditative things you can do, because you're not exerting yourself. Like when I ride my bicycle, never that hard, but I ride almost every day of the week. I rode yesterday morning, this morning, some friends in Albuquerque, and it's awesome. I will never, as long as I can, I will always ride bikes and exercise and hike and do all that stuff. But there's something incredibly meditative about this constant motion. And yes, I'm sure you can get this with walking and non-motorized things, and probably better for most people. But for me, it's like just to be able to sit and view and have this constantly changing view without exerting yourself is just one of the most meditative things. And I've said this before. I've said this for years, actually. And it's just always something that calms me thoroughly. You know, I can come out into the woods like this and have so much anxiety or whatever's going on in my life, and within a short amount of time, I am calm just doing this. And it really is something. I used to never go alone. And when you're not alone, you're talking on the CB, you're doing a lot of active things, so it's not that meditative. But when you're alone, it's incredible. Like, you can just go at your own pace, especially in Cecil the bus. You've got this open window in front of you. I'm going all of 3 miles an hour, just cruising along endless forest roads, nothing terribly challenging. You know, I got to pay attention, but and you never know. There could be areas. One of these mud holes could be a bottomless pit, so you do have to be careful and you have to be aware. But it's just wonderful. If you've never done this before as a kind of calming meditative activity, it definitely ranks way up there, as well as being a super fun, adrenaline-filled activity at times, and one where you have to be fully actively engaged. Humongous mushroom. See if I can get that in the. No, I don't think I got it. But and so the plan is for today, I'm just exploring a couple of ways to make a loop out here, and then I'm just probably going to call it quits and head home and do a little editing and just throw the video out. And so people have been asking me, like, what happened to you? I don't have a lot of followers, but I do have the ones who I do have seem to really care, because they've been asking me, are you okay? Like, what happened? Because I haven't been able to put anything out in 2 months because of the engine build, which I'm dialing in. I've been slowly tweaking the carburetors and trying to get them to be running a little bit better, less flat spots and things like that, so it's coming along. But we'll see. We're hopefully getting a little bit more technical terrain out here, and I'll video all that stuff. So when I was in Vermont, when I was off-roading in Vermont, I would never, ever leave the trail without a chainsaw. And I have, honestly, here in New Mexico, I think I've used my chainsaw once. So I don't carry my big steel gas-powered chainsaw anymore because I just don't use it that much. But what I do carry is this little DeWalt, no Violet, there's this little DeWalt chainsaw that I keep fastened back here in the engine bay because there's like a nice little compartment. I can get this darn thing off. I've got a little bungee thing on it, and I keep the saw, this little DeWalt electric saw, and some bar and chain oil, and I just keep it back there. And it probably isn't the greatest thing for it, but it does leak the bar and chain oil a little bit, so it's a great place to just leave it because it's just like a little metal compartment there, and it even has a hole in the bottom of it too, but it leaks, for it to leak out, but it doesn't leak that much. So, but what's great about this thing is, like, every once in a while you just charge the battery, and then you just, boom, you just turn it on, it's on, and it's quiet, and it's nice. And I've got a little, I'll bring it right up with you guys.
Bye.